The Iron Church is at it again! What's going on, everyone? My name is Tenebrous Infinite, and welcome back to Generation Zero. So the Iron Church has always kind of been this hidden in plain sight kind of thing here in Generation Zero, and with FNIX Rising, it is absolutely no different. But we have found now the second battleground that the Iron Church has had in the map of Generation Zero. And man, is this a juicy battleground. We can glean so much information from this location, from developments that the Iron Church has supposedly made, to a whole bunch of theorizing that we can kind of make based off of this location and based off of the desecration that you can find at this spot. As well, this also will be tying into my last video, so if you guys haven't seen my video on Frederick Holberg yet, you might want to go check that out after this one. Now, one of the most interesting things that I think comes from this little set piece here is proof that the Iron Church is now hunting bigger game in the world of Generation Zero. So off at Bunker 666, which is our first really clear example of the Iron Church fighting against machines, the only thing we can find are some downed Seekers. But here off at this new location, there's actually downed hunters and runners as well, and I'm just waiting until we find a tank that's filled with all of these crazy vibrosauroids. But yeah, I think that it's really cool seeing bigger machines getting taken down by the Iron Church, because that shows them kind of expanding and broadening their combat. And that's going to be one of the big things that we're going to talk about here in this video, is how this set piece here is a clear example of the broadening of the Iron Church's horizons. Now we can see that the MO of the Iron Church is pretty much the exact same between the Seekers, simply going for their vision module and taking that down, likely in some sort of a sneak attack, I would figure, just so that way the Seeker itself doesn't set off an alarm and draw in a million machines on them. But the interesting thing is how they went about taking down both the Hunter and the Runner. Or the examples of that you could find in this location. So with the hunters and the runners, it seems like they're actually going for kind of the center of mass, or like the direct middle of the machine, which is a much more brutish and violent approach than what the Iron Church usually takes with their combat. Now, this is only the second example we've gotten of the Iron Church's combat here in Generation Zero, so potentially they are much more violent than I imagine. But on the other hand, it could also just be a development of tactics. They potentially take down Seekers all stealthy-like, and then they take down runners and hunters and potentially bigger machines with much more aggressive approaches. Coinciding with the development of potentially more brutish tactics from the Iron Church, we also see that there's been a small redesign with the hilt of the Hunter Vibrosword that they wield, actually. So they seem to have dropped about 20 pounds off of their hilt. And it's hard to say why they potentially have. Maybe there are two variants of Hunter Vibrosword that they wield, maybe one being the heavy version with a heavy hilt, and then one being a light version with the light hilt. Or potentially, maybe in the first place, they were using the heavy hilt to add momentum and inertia to their swings and attacks to better impact the machines. And after developing techniques to attack machine weak points, they maybe saw it fitting to actually drop that extra weight. Or it could be an effort to make the Hunter Vibrosword more accessible to other members of the Iron Church. Wielding a 25-pound hilt is some serious leverage to be carrying around the whole time and just swinging away with. So maybe they dropped that extra 20 pounds in order to make the Hunter Vibrosword more easy to wield. I'm really curious if we're ever going to see a further redesign on the hilt itself, potentially even dropping that final 5 pound weight and just having the one 5 pound right beneath the blade. I think that that would be really kind of cool in its own way. Having the full on dumbbell is pretty slick, but having it as more of a proper hilt to the Vibrasword itself would be also really cool, I think. Now, for how this all ties into my last video. With the last video, we found out and kind of theorized that Frederick Holberg might be off at the Ring Fort, posing as a Resistance member, or potentially just joining up with the Resistance itself. So one of the things that we know about Frederick Holberg is that he has really strong ties to the Iron Church. He might even be the potential creator and origin of the Iron Church itself. So one of the ties that we can kind of make here is that if that is Frederick Holberg over at the Ring Fort, that he could be potentially guiding the Iron Church here on the southern coast with their new activities. That was one of the things that I actually brought up in the video, is that he could be kind of posing as an ally to the Resistance, but instead be working for his own motives of, kind of gaining intel for the Iron Church itself. Equally, another idea that I brought up in that video was that potentially Frederick Holberg would be our method to getting into the Iron Church itself. And so that just kind of, again, just ties the whole theory together with the Iron Church's activity on the southern coast, and then Frederick Holberg being our method of access to the Iron Church. It just kind of conceptually ties it all together as it evolves across the landscape here. Now, you guys can find this location off at -4239 by 4190 on the southern coast, just a little bit northward of the Torsberga Fort safe house. Also, you can find it just kind of on the edge of the little bit of rough terrain kind of marker that you get there on the map. I highly advise you all come and check out this location. It's super interesting, and you never know what you might find here. You guys might be able to find something that I didn't. And then equally on top of that, this area is just nice for the amount of loot you can get from it too. So there you dudes go, some real brain food to kind of chew on about the Iron Church here. A lot of theorizing and a lot of pondering here, but hopefully at some point it will all be made clear as to what the motive of the Iron Church even is. So let me know if you dudes find any other examples of the Iron Church's activity across the map here. It's a massive map here in Generation Zero, so any assistance that you dudes throw my way is hugely appreciated, because I absolutely love talking about the Iron Church. They're probably one of my favorite things about Generation Zero so far, or at least with the way it's adapted and evolved over time. But yeah, thank you so much for watching. Hopefully you guys have enjoyed this video. If you haven't yet, consider subscribing for tons and tons of Generation Zero content and everything Systemic Reaction here on my channel. And if you haven't yet, maybe consider hitting that thumbs up button as well. But yeah, again, thank you so much for watching, and I will catch you guys in the next one. Until then, peace.